Good day, I'm Askar Sherliyev with the latest news from Kazakhstan. Despite the numerous opposition protests, Astana is going to host the OSCE summit. Interest holders intend to continue hunger striking until December, when Kazakhstan will host the leaders of the OSCE member states. The grain export issue creates controversies amongst customs union member states. President Nursultan Nazarbayev had made an official statement about the OSCE summit to be held in Astana later this year. This decision was made by the Council of the Member States' Foreign Affairs Ministries, and the date was determined as December 1st and 2nd. The head of state had noticeably excited to announce it to the public on Thursday. It is known that for official Astana, hosting the OSCE summit is an issue of prestige. The following statement of the president contains big hopes and, moreover, big promises.
The decision reflects the deep respect the international communities pay to the success of Kazakhstan achieved during years of its independence, reads the official statement. Further quote, "I believe the high-level meeting will help our organization to adjust to modern challenges. It will demonstrate to the whole world the successful evolution of the OSCE from Helsinki to Astana," end quote. The head of state emphasized that the hosting of the OSCE summit, first ever international forum of such scale on the territory of the former USSR, is not only a big honor, but a responsibility. We have a unique chance to demonstrate the key values of our society, such as tolerance, respect of cultures, trust and mutual understanding, said the president.
The issue of hosting OSCE summit in Astana was hotly being debated over by Kazakhstan's opposition and civil society members. Public organizations say during a year of chairmanship, Kazakhstan had many facts which contradict to the principles of the OSCE, including the arrest with political motives and adoption of the leader of nation law, granting the president absolute power.
On December 1st and 2nd, Astana is hosting 56 high-ranking visitors. The issue of Kazakhstan's prestige was determined, which was discussed by the heads of foreign affairs ministers of those countries where Kazakhstan was not able to resolve conflicts, even though it had declared about the undertaken measures. The official representatives of the Kazakh foreign affairs minister, Askar Abdurakhmanov, said that on August 5th, the heads of the Kazakh and Turkish foreign affairs ministers unofficially met in Bodrum. The participants of the meeting have expressed deep satisfaction by the decision accepted by the Council of Foreign Affairs Ministers of OSCE member states concerning the OSCE summit in Astana planned for December 2010. Even though the Kazakh opposition inside and outside the country have expressed their disagreement concerning the summit in Astana, the public had enough of causes to declare to the international community that the current OSCE chair is not worthy of hosting the summit. First of all, it concerns the law that granted Nursultan Nazarbayev with the status of leader of nation. Political scientist Rasul Jumali is confident that the summit and the spending of money on it can be understood only if it will be really effective and not just a PR move on budget money. In case with Kyrgyzstan, we still don't see the real efficiency from the OSCE side. Jumali also thinks that the most important thing is when the words will meet the deeds. It's quite possible that in December the heads of states will send their deputies or the foreign affairs ministers for the summit.
In response to the governmental session held in Astana, the hunger-striking interest holders organized a small press conference. Earlier this week, President Nazarbayev had ordered the law enforcement bodies to take care of the interest holders' problems.
During a government session in Astana, it was reported that from the moment when the anti-crisis program was launched, problems of 45,000 interest holders were solved, as more than 300 estate projects were completed and $3.5 billion were allocated for this purpose. Hunger-striking interest holders say these figures are exaggerated. In Astana alone, there are more than 3,000 residents still can't resolve their housing problems. About half of them demand the government to cancel its decree which had imposed limits in apartment ownership rights. They intend to continue their action launched on June 16th until December 1st, when the OSCE summit will start. Then interest holders intend to demand the audience of President Nazarbayev and OSCE member states' leaders. We are initiating these wide-scale activities in order to reach the attention of Kazakh president, so he orders his subordinates to solve the issue on the lower levels, including local law enforcement bodies and courts. We'll do everything possible to make the information as transparent and accessible as possible.
Kazakh Agriculture Ministry claims that local grain may be exported freely as the country has sufficient reserves for internal needs. At the same time, Russia had banned the export of grain from the country due to the low harvest caused by the extreme droughts this year. Moreover, Russia had advised to all customs union fellow members to do the same. However, Kazakhstan and Belarus seemed not to reach compromise in grain export issues so far. It appeared that economic interests of each member state have higher priority, despite the political statements made. Next story has more.
The Kazakh agriculture minister asking the government not to ban export of grain as Russia. According to the state officials, Kazakhstan has sufficient grain reserves for the internal use. Any ban would lead to economic losses. The head of state, who plans to increase the harvest capacities, would definitely dislike the idea. The challenges of this year showed once again that those economies who use water-saving technologies still collect the average harvest. This is an example for all economies to use this method. Surprisingly, the last year's harvest was rotting on open air. The farmers of the grain-rich southern Kazakhstan are pessimistic, considering the fact that high-tech mentioned by the president have not reached the majority of fields. Of course, it is hard. It will not influence the early terms, while the rain could help later on. The areas covered by stormy rains have better harvest. Traders claim that prices for grain will increase in autumn. The desire of Kazakh agrarians is well understood, but the Russian ban on grain export is impossible without the consent of all custom union members. Canada, Australia and Latin America also had poor harvest. I expect to increase the grain prices at the same time the government will be taking measures to decrease or ban the export altogether. Analysts warn by saying that grain can be easily stored and sold after the ban is abolished. This means that internal prices for ordinary citizens will still be increasing.
Made in Kazakhstan, a newly created state body, National Local Content Development Agency, will be now in charge of increasing the amount of products bearing such label. Formerly, it was known as the Kazakh Contracting Agency. Now the agency has expanded its activities, covering not only the mineral resources uses, but any other industries manufacturing goods in Kazakhstan.
The new agency will calculate with a new method, as the old formula which has been employed in calculating the Kazakh substance was admitted ineffective and loss-prone. This is very well reflected on the report of the agency for the last 6 months. The reliable data and the share of Kazakh substances in the goods manufactured in the country is simply not available, just as the administrative measures for non-compliance with the Kazakh substance shares requirements were never applied. Because of the complicated calculations, the entrepreneurs are forced to provide with inaccurate data, which sometimes is impossible to verify. As for the 6-month period, we established that we have no sufficient human resources to check all the substance reports for compliance with reality. No, we can't simply go out and inspect all 9,000 suppliers, therefore many of them falsify the data. The formula must be simplified and easily accessible. Independent Business Association Vice President Timur Nazkhanov believes this can hardly change the situation. Again, the attempt to protect the national manufacturers will be passed by the small businesses again, as the big and medium businesses may adjust in any case, whether or not to change the formula, says an entrepreneur. I personally am quite skeptical about the efficiency of this program. It actually is not a bad program, but we have had many such good programs in the past. But how many of them were implemented? How many businesses were launched which are successfully operating now, manufacturing products? This is a very doubtful issue.
Kazakh Foreign Affairs Ministry has no information about the Kyrgyz oppositionist Urmat Baraktabasov participating in 2 political overthrows in Kyrgyzstan. The criminal case was instigated against him after the attempt to take over the power by storming the presidential administration building in Bishkek in June 2005. He disappeared short after from the country and returned after overthrow of Bakiyev's regime. Kazakh Foreign Affairs Ministry couldn't confirm whether or not Baraktabasov had dual citizenship, as he is believed to have both Kazakh and Kyrgyz citizenships at the same time. According to some sources, Kyrgyz politician is wanted by Kazakh law enforcement bodies for economic crime charges.
Recently, the Kyrgyz authorities said the General Prosecutor's Office of Kazakhstan had inquired them to extradite Baraktabasov due to the criminal cases instigated against him. On Thursday, the supporters of Baraktabasov attempted to hold a conference in Bishkek, which turned into a rally of more than 1,500 people. People gathering in front of the Kyrgyz parliament protested against the current leadership of the country and especially against President Roza Atumbayeva. Police had broke up the protesters in the outskirts of Bishkek, which were going to join their fellows in one of the city squares. Kazakh Foreign Affairs Ministry has no information on Urmat Baraktabasov. It may be an issue that is of other state bodies' competence.
Empty refrigerators, spoiled foodstuffs and cooking an open fire by turns. This is the reality of living for more than 50 residents of Ust-Kamenogorsk apartment block, which is cut off from the electricity for already 2 weeks. No one rushes to take the responsibility over the situation, which apparently was caused due to the outdated power grid. Next story has more.
Today we are cooking on an open fire like savage people. Residents of this very apartment block in Ust-Kamenogorsk are practicing a primitive way of life as we are cut off the electricity for already 2 weeks. People are forced to cook outside on open fire. Tatiana Vaganov is a young parent. Cooking for a big family is just part of the problem as she has an infant in arms who is on nutritional support. Aren't we human beings, or are we living in another country? Why can't they simply provide electricity? I understand if she was at least a year old, but my baby is just 5 years old. How should I feed her? Because of the situation, the goods are spoiled within a few hours. Therefore, people's refrigerators are emptied. There are no cafes or shops nearby the building. Pensioner Anna Alkhovskaya suffers from diabetics. She hardly finds her medicine under the candlelight. She says it's the fault of authorities and she can remember living like this during the World War II. I have no idea how we are going to survive like this if the authorities don't care. The city administration, why they are inactive? Because he doesn't know what it is like. I remember living like this during the war. It appeared that the power supply network in the building is outdated while it doesn't belong to any flat owners cooperative. The regional electrical supplying company says it's responsible only for supply, not maintenance of the power grids of the building. The money for capital repair is needed as none of the power supply networks have been maintained for the last 20-30 years, so now we'll take care of the unmaintained ones. Meanwhile, authorities call the residents for patience, but this is not the first time, say residents, recalling the last spring when they had to live without electricity for 1 month long.
On Friday, the Hiroshima and Nagasaki tragedy was commemorated worldwide. 65 years ago, two mentioned Japanese cities were bombed with nuclear weapons. Astana wasn't the exception in commemorating the victims of the Japanese tragedy.
About 130,000 peaceful residents of Japan had died as a result of August 6 and 9 nuclear bomb attacks in 1945. The ruling party Noradan had organized a requiem next to the motherland monument in Astana to commemorate the tragedy. The event, titled the Japanese Nabat, was joined by party activists, representatives of various religions and Japanese ambassador. As the only country suffered the nuclear bombing during the World War II, Japan has actively been involved in all the international dealings regarding the nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation and supports Kazakhstan's thematic endeavors.
These were the main stories for today. Goodbye.